Welcome to Lesson 8 of Unit 2. This lesson is on percent. Your learning target for this lesson is to be able to solve problems that are involving different types of percents. So first of all, what is a percent? Let's go ahead and work with some vocabulary and definitions. And a percent is just a ratio. We've talked about ratio, so it's a fraction that compares a number to 100. The word percent, if you break it down, means per 100, which means divide by 100. The percent symbol, which is this, tells us to divide by 100. Percents can be written as fractions or they can be written as decimals, and we'll talk about how to do both of those representations. So here's how it works. To find the decimal equivalent of a percent, you have two options. You can divide by 100 on your calculator and drop the percent sign, or you can take the shortcut and just move the decimal 2 places to the left. For example, if I want 25% as a decimal, my decimal point is after the 5. I can go 2 to the left and it would be 0.25 and drop the percent. Or I can use a fraction. I can take 25 over 100 and take 25 divided by 100 on my calculator, and that would give me 0.25. That is how you convert from a percent to a decimal. Now to convert from a percent to a fraction, what we're going to do is we're going to write it as a fraction with the denominator of 100 and then simplify it. So for example, if I have 25%, I want to write it as 25 over 100 and then reduce. Both of these can be divided by 25 and I get 1 over 4. So 1/4 is the fraction equivalent of 25%. 0.25 is the decimal equivalent of 25%. To solve, what we're going to do is we are going to use this formula. It says is over of equals percent over 100. I'll show you that in the next slide. Common equivalents of some things that you should recognize without even having to use a calculator. You should recognize both the decimal and fraction equivalent of all of these percents. So 100%, you should recognize that as a fraction is just 1, and as a decimal is 1.0. 80% would be like 80 over 100, which is the same as 4/5, which is 0.8. 50% is a half. As a decimal, it's 0.5. 10% is 1/10, which as a decimal is 0.1. 20% is 0.2, which is 1 over 5. And here are all of those equivalents. So make sure that you recognize those. You should be able to do all of those without using your calculator. The greatest percent that's shown in this table is 100%. And it's equivalent to a fraction of 1. But you can have percents that are greater than 100. For example, 120%, remember to express that as a fraction or as a decimal, we put it over 100. So we'd have 120 over 100. And as a decimal, that's 1.2. Likewise, we can have percents that are less than 1%. What if we had 0.5%? Well, remember what we do is we put that number over 100, 0.5 divided by 100, and then divide that on your calculator and you'd get 0.005. That's the decimal equivalent of 0.5%. Students get confused by this. If it has a percent sign, remember you still got to move 2 to the left to get the decimal. So you can use the proportion, the part to the whole is equal to the percent over 100 to find the unknown values. I prefer rather than part over whole is over of. Okay, so down here is over of is equal to percent over 100. So here we go. What number is 75% of 100? Here's a reminder. Is equals, of means multiply. So I'm going to use is over of equals percent over 100. Well, the 75%, we can already put that on the right, is equal to 75 over 100. We're looking for the is part. What number is? We don't know the is. Of is 200. So we have x over 200 is equal to 75 over 100. So now to solve that thing, here's what we're going to do. Let's see, I'll use blue. We're going to cross multiply. Okay, so we're going to have 100x is equal to the other product, which is 200 times 75. I'm not going to multiply that out because I know some things are going to cancel here. So x is being multiplied by 100, so I want to do the opposite and divide by 100. And I have to do the same thing on both sides. So notice my 100s will cancel. 100 over 100 is just 1, and 1 times x is x. X is equal to, so 100 and 200. We can divide both of those by 100 and get a 2 up here and a 1 down here. 2 times 75 is 150. So that is our answer for that problem. X is equal to 150. Second problem says, what number is 120% of 25? Well, again, we have the percentage, 120% over 100. It's percent over 100. We're looking for the is, and we have the of. Of is 25. So again, to solve this, we're going to cross multiply. 100 times x is equal to 120 times 25. Okay, and remember we want to go ahead and do the opposite operation. It's being multiplied by 100, so we're going to divide by 100 because we're trying to get x alone when we're trying to solve. So 100 over 100 is 1, and we get x is equal to, well, 25 goes into 100 4 times. There's 4 quarters in a dollar, right? And then 4 goes into 120 3 times, and this becomes a 1. So I have 3 times 1 over 1, which is just 3. One more on this slide. It says 12 is, so we have 12 as the is. We have of is 72. So 12 over 72 is equal to, and this time we're looking for the percent. Well, remember the percent is always over 100, so we have x over 100. So now when we go ahead and solve this one, and we cross multiply, we're going to have 72x is equal to 12 times 100. But we want to solve for x, so we're going to divide by 72. We always divide by the number that's with the variable. Divide both sides by 72. These cancel, and I have x is equal to. So now we can divide some things out here. Let's see what we can simplify. What numbers go into both 72 and 12? And I think 6 goes into both of those, or 12 actually goes into 72, right? So if I take 72 divided by 12, I believe that's 6, right? Yep. So this one is a 1, and this one is a 6, if I divide 12 into both of those. These two are both even, so I'm going to divide by 2, get a 3 here, divide by 2, get a 50, and 50 divided by 3 on your calculator is 16.6 repeating. So just put a little bar over the part that repeats. So 12 is what percent of 72? 16.6%. That would be the same as a fraction. It would be 16 2/3%. Is another way of writing that. All right, here's another one. What percent of 60 is 45? So this time we're looking for the percent. Is 45, of is 60. So here's our setup. We have 45 over 60, is over of equals percent over 100. So we want to cross multiply again. So we're going to multiply 60 times x is equal to 45 times 100. To get x alone, we're going to divide by 60 on both sides. These cancel, and x is equal to, okay, we can divide by 10, right, and get rid of a 0. 60 divided by 10 is 6. 100 divided by 10 is 10. And what else can we do? Let's divide by 2 and get a 3 here. Divide by 2 and get a 5 here. And then 3 goes into 45. I hope I don't lose you with all of these divisions, okay? Let me know if you get lost. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 45 divided by 3 is 15. And so we have 15 times 5 over 1. And that just gives us 75. Next problem, 120% of what number is 90? Well, we have is 90. We're looking for of, so we're going to have 90 over x equals 120 over 100. And then let's go ahead and cross multiply again. So we get 120x equals 90 times 100. Then we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by 120 to get x alone. And the 120s cancel. And we're left with x equal to, divide by 10, that'll get rid of one of your zeros. And what else can we do? 12. What goes into both 12 and 10? How about a 2? If we divide by 2, we get 6. We divide by 2, we get a 5. And what goes into both 90 and 6? I think 6 actually goes into 90. 90 divided by 6 is, I believe, 15. And then 15 times 5, again, we get 75. Number 6 says 48 is 15% of what number? Well, we have 48 as the is, of is unknown, so we're going to have 48 over x equals 15 over 100. And again, let's go ahead and cross multiply. So we're going to multiply this way, and we get 15x is equal to 48 multiplied by 100. We want to get the x alone, so we're going to divide both sides by 15. 15s are going to cancel again, and we're left with x is equal to, now what goes into both 15 and 100? How about if we divide by 5? Get a 3 there, and we'll get a 20 here, right? And then 3 goes into 48. I don't know if you recognize that, but hopefully you can do that on your calculator. You can just multiply this all out and do the same thing. You can go 48 times 100 divided by 15 and just get it right away as well. I don't have a calculator in front of me, so I'm trying to do these just by using factors that I know. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, 48 divided by 3 is 16, and then 16 times 20 is 320. Paul worked 45 hours at $12.50 per hour during this month. If he saves 30% of his monthly earnings, how much will he save this month? Well, first of all, we got to figure out how much did he make. He worked for 45 hours, and every hour he worked, he got $12.50. So here's his rate times the number of hours gives us how much he made this month. So that's what we call his gross earnings. Now he's going to save 30% of that. So we want to know how much he's going to save. So 30% of his monthly earnings is saved. So is over of equals percent over 100. Well, the percent is 30 over 100. Okay, we're looking for how much he saved, so that's unknown. So it's going to be x over of was his monthly earnings, so it's x over 562.50. And then we're going to cross multiply, right? So you ready? Here we go. Let's go ahead and do the math. I think I'm going to need my calculator for this one. So we're going to multiply this way. 100 times x is equal to 30 times 562.50. Okay? And then if we want to solve for x, we're going to go ahead and divide by 100 on both sides. The 100s cancel. And let's see, I can divide by 10 right there. So I have 3 times this one divided by 10. And this time I'm going to go right to my calculator. 3 multiplied by 522.50 divided by 10 gives me 156.75. So he saved $156.75. Jewelers use the carat system to determine the amount of pure gold in jewelry. Pure gold is 24 karat, meaning the item is 100% gold. So when you hear something is 24 karat, that means it's solid gold. It's 100% gold. There's no impurities. A 14 karat gold ring contains 14 parts of gold and 10 parts of other metal. What percent of the ring is gold? Round to the nearest percent. So we can use this is over of is equal to percent over 100. So we know that a 24 karat is 100%, right? So if we know it's 100%, we can use the of part being 24 carats, and we want to find the percent for a 14 karat. So we can do 14 over 24 is equal to x over 100, and then go ahead and cross multiply, and we get 14 times 100, which is 1400, is equal to 24x, and then dividing both sides by 24, we end up with x being 58.3 repeating. So rounded to the nearest percent, since this is less than 0.5, we'll just drop that and say it's about 58% gold. Simple interest. Interest is the amount of money that a bank charges when you borrow money, or it's also the amount of money that you earn when you put your money into a savings account or you invest it in some way. So that's what interest is. A principal is the amount of money that you borrow or the amount of money that you invest. So it's just a lump sum of money that you either take away from the bank or give to the bank. So the formula for simple interest is I equals P times R times T. I is the interest, P is the principal, R is the rate. Now the rate has to be annual and it's a decimal, okay? And the time is always in years. Let's do some problems involving simple interest. So this one says find the simple interest paid annually after 2 years on a $900 loan at 16% per year. So we want to start by writing our formula. I'm going to use a different color. I equals PRT. Okay, now let's just substitute what we know. The interest is what we're looking for. Find the simple interest. Okay, so that's the first thing you want to do is identify what you're looking for. Find the simple interest. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and fill in what we know. So we don't know I, that's what we're looking for. I is equal to, what is the principal amount? That's $900. That's that lump sum, right? $900. What is the rate? The rate is 16% per year. So we've already got it as an annual rate, but we need to change it from a percent to a decimal, okay? So 16%, remember we can just move the decimal 2 places. So it's after the 6, so we want it to be 2 places left. So it's 0.16 as a decimal is the rate. And how much time? Time is 2 years, so we multiply by 2. Our time always needs to be in years. And now we're just going to plug that in on our calculator. We're going to take 900 times 0.16 times 2. Okay, so when you punch that in, if I did that right, I have $288. Hopefully that's right. Let me do it one more time. 900 times 0.16 times 2. It looks like that's right. Let me know if I make an error on any of these and I'll correct that. Okay. After 3 months, the simple interest earned annually on an investment of $7,000 was $63. Find the interest rate. Well, we're going to use the exact same formula. I equals PRT. Okay. This time we know I. It says the interest was $63. Okay. So we're going to plug that in for I. That one is 63. Do we know the principal? How much money did they invest? That was $7,000, right? So we have $7,000. We're looking for the rate. So I'm going to leave that as R. How much time? 3 months. Now remember we need this to be in years. So how many years is 3 months? Well, remember we have 3 months. And we want to do a conversion from months to years, right? What's the conversion from months to years? 1 year has 12 months, right? So this is equal to 3/12 of a year, which is 1/4 of a year. So I think I'm going to use 0.25. You could use 1/4 or you could use the decimal 0.25. So now I've got all this stuff, right? I need to figure out how to get R alone. So fortunately, we know how to solve these equations. And let's go ahead. We're trying to get R alone. Let's go ahead and multiply 7,000 times 0.25. And that gives us 1,750. So we have 63 is equal to 1750. And we still have times R. So if we want to get R alone, we have to undo whatever's happening. It's being multiplied. So we need to divide. And we're going to do the same number on both sides. So don't get afraid just because you're going to get a weird decimal here. This tells us R is equal to, if you take 63 divided by 1750, we get 0. Looks like 0.036. So that's the decimal rate, but to convert that to percent, it says find the interest rate, and the interest rate is usually given as a percent. So we need to move our decimal 2 places to the right to get our equivalent percentage. So this is equivalent to 3.6% interest rate. So another practical application is estimating tips and tax. This is another way of using decimals and percents and fractions and all these things. So a sales tax and tips can be estimated instead of using a calculator to find the exact value. A lot of times when you go out to eat and you're paying the bill, you just want a quick estimate. Usually we try to round things and get amounts that are very easily to do in our head. So to estimate, we want to use mental math, not a calculator. So when you see problems where it says estimate what the tax is going to be or estimate what the tip will be, no calculator allowed. So some hints. If you're going to find 10% of a number, what you're going to do is you're going to move the decimal place 1 place to the left. If you want to find 1% of a number, you move the decimal 2 places to the left. If you want to find 5% of a number, what you can do is find 10% and then take half of 10%, right? Half of 10 is 5. So you can move the decimal place to the left 1 place and divide it by 2, or divide it by 2 and then move it. So let's put this into action. It says a dinner check for Maria's family is $67.95, estimate a 15% tip. Well, the first thing we want to do if we're going to be estimating is we need a number that's easy to work with. So we're first going to round that $67.95 to $70 because that's an even number that's easy to work with in our head without a calculator. The second thing is if we want a 15% tip, we're going to think of that as 10% plus 5%. So what we're going to do with that is 10% of 70 is just $7. We just move the decimal 1 place to the left to get 10%. Now remember 5% is half of 10%, right? So we're just going to get half of whatever this is. So 5% is 10% divided by 2. Since our 10% was 7, we divide that by 2 and get 350. So here's our 10%, here's our 5%. If we add those together, 15% is 10 plus 5. We get a total of $10.50 for our tip. And we didn't even need a calculator. How about an example using sales tax? Let's say the sales tax rate is 6.25%. Estimate the sales tax on a shirt if the shirt costs $29.50. So first we're going to do is round 6.25% to 6. Okay, so we can also round the sales tax rate. And we're also going to round this to $30. Okay, 1/4% is going to be difficult for us, so let's just take 6%. That's going to be close. So we want to think that 1% of 30 is 30 cents, right? If we want 1%, we move the decimal 2 to the left, so that gives us 30 cents. If we want 6%, we can just take 6 times 1%, right? So 1 times 6% would give us our 6%. So 6 times 30 cents is $1.80. So our sales tax is about $1.80. There you have it. That'll do it. Sorry for the long video. See you next time.